Lovely. So you should have got that notification that we're just starting to record. So as I mentioned right at the beginning, a big welcome to you all. Lovely to have you here on a Wednesday evening to talk about debt and managing our credit wisely. If it's that you can't stay for the full session, that's okay. So feel free to sort of pop in and out. You don't even need to let me know. I won't take it personally. So I know you've got other things. People are often juggling a lot of things. But know that the session's recorded, and Alison will send out the link to where you can listen back to that recording if that's the case for you. So it's lovely. So nice small group for us tonight. My name's Liz McLardy, so I'm going to be running the session tonight, and I'll give you a little bit of a background about me in a minute. But firstly, just a huge big welcome to you all. Welcome to Mika as well. Lovely to have you here. Be nice if you just pop in where you're located. Be great for us. You'll see some of the other attendees have popped in where they are, so you can get a sense of where we're connecting in from. But I'd like to just start off with a big welcome to acknowledge, and I guess this picture kind of speaks to all the amazing work that you're all doing. So I've been sent the attendee list, and I know that you're all studying lots of different things across the uni and a lot of amazing work that's going on. So it's wonderful that you're doing that, and great to engage with some of the additional resources like this session tonight. Tamika, you've got your mic on. Did you have a question?
Oh, sorry. I've come in late. I just actually got off a tutorial from uni, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. All good. And you can turn it on, so when I see the mic on, I'll know that somebody's wanting to ask a question. Feel free, you can interrupt me at any time. So it's a nice small group. We can keep it quite casual. Before we officially get started, acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands from which we're all connecting in from today for this webinar, so across Australia. So Tamika's also in Northern New South Wales, so we're pretty close. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and recognise and celebrate their connection and role in caring for country over thousands of years. May their wisdom and strength be with us today. So really quickly, you may have come across maybe some of my videos before or been to one of my sessions, maybe. I can't see everyone's face, so I recognise faces and not names. But just quickly, my background is really in accounting. I'm a CPA, but I've also had a fair bit of experience of sort of corporate life, but then moved into education, taught at Southern Cross for about 5 years, and moved into Swinburne and a couple of other institutes in Melbourne. So really passionate about financial literacy, obviously in the context of businesses and organisations and keeping them healthy, but really important, I guess it became really a big topic during COVID. It sort of became an area that I then went and studied financial counselling and understanding how I could use those skills to help individuals as well to kind of have a much more healthy financial life. So that's part of my work that I do with the SCPA. And I guess these webinars that we've put together are really to help you as postgrad students to feel more confident with your finances and to then alleviate a lot of the stress that finance causes, to hopefully reduce some of that so you've got more time to dedicate to your studies and obviously doing the things that you love with the people you love, so that finances don't have to be taking up so much of that brain space that you need for other things. So in tonight's session, and before I click over to that slide where we're going to talk about debt, I would love, because I've got a small group too, really nice if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat or with your audio, is to share maybe what it was about tonight's session that caught your interest. What was it that you perhaps are hoping that we might cover? And if we're not going to cover it, I can try and incorporate it as well. So it kind of allows me to kind of get an idea of what it is that you're really wanting to get out of tonight, or perhaps what it was that, you know, caught your interest. It'd be nice if you could just share that if you're comfortable. Give everyone a little minute just to think about that and maybe pop that in the chat. Lovely, thanks. So Tamika's thinking about for personal use. Yeah, perfect. So you're hoping to learn a couple of things that you can apply to your personal life and your personal finances. That's great. Okay, lovely. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks for sharing that too. That's great. So in a situation where you are carrying debt and you want to get out of it before you start working for yourself, which is a really great idea. Cool. That's great. So even just from those two responses, what I do like to acknowledge, and also for the students who are listening back to this recording, is that because I'm not working with you one-on-one, we're going to have quite a variety of different circumstances. And it's not that you're to share those or anything, but what I wanted to acknowledge is that we may have students who are listening to this resource interested in learning about it. You may not be in debt at the moment. And then to the other end of the spectrum is that you may be carrying various different types of debt. We can talk about that. So we may have, so I want to try and accommodate both. The key that I do have a key message that we'll walk away at the end of the session with, but this webinar is a little bit different in terms of, I guess there's going to be a little bit of a, it's more of an information transfer. And I would like to sort of check in with you, so it's a little bit engaging, but there's going to be a bit more information transfer than anything. And then towards the end, you'll have some sort of key sort of takeaways in terms of hopefully what you can do with your debt and how you can prioritize and how you can actually attend it and attack it. I can see Jade's included here. So you've got minimal knowledge about your, so looking to, so increase your financial literacy and skills, which is brilliant. That's lovely. And Belinda, how to manage debt, studying taking up so much time. And yes, it is hard. So it's quite a unique scenario. Many of you are probably into with study. You are perhaps in a season where you have only so much time to work. So it's probably a bit of a pressured financial situation because you're not being able to, most people are not necessarily working to their capacity. So you're studying and working and you probably have less income available. So hopefully the ideal scenario is that you're not getting into debt it may be that your fees may be a debt that's growing, but I mean, day to day, hopefully perhaps you plan for this period, maybe put some money aside, or that you're working enough to cover your costs. That's kind of the ideal scenario. But perhaps if you are actually accumulating debt as you're studying, we can have a little bit of a chat about that as well, and maybe some things that you might change or modify to reduce the stress of that at the end of the study period. So yes, we often have some students who are studying full-time and some that are still working full-time. So again, we've got variances there as well. So different sort of circumstances, which is always the same for anything to do with our financial life. It's one of the reasons why it's often so stressful is because you don't really have anything to compare it against that's meaningful other than your own situation and your own journey of where you've been on. Everybody's circumstances are so different. We all start from a different place, but we also have so many different variables like work to start with, like study, like expenses, different things that we spend our money on. So there's so many different variables and you just can't compare yourself with other people. So what comes with that is a stress in itself, because you just never feel content. You never feel like, you know, how am I doing? Am I managing well or not? You just don't know, because you compare yourself to all of these unmeaningful comparisons, which are other people. So you need to always come back to your own situation, and even just comparing yourself from the past and how you're progressing, that can be much more of a meaningful comparison. So yes, finances are very stressful, but tonight what we're going to focus on is talking about debt, and particularly credit card debt. So as I said, the first bit is a bit of an information thing, knowing that we've got a lot of different people joining and listening back. So I want to make sure that we kind of get up to speed. My first slide is really to kind of give us a bit of an idea of what is the current credit card landscape in Australia. So if you are, and again, if you want to share, if you have a credit card, that would be nice. If you are actually carrying any debt on it at the moment as well, and you're paying fees, you can include. So Belinda's nodding and saying yes. So if you are saying yes, and somebody listening back to this is also, I guess this slide is really saying, well, that's not that abnormal. There are a lot of Australians who have credit cards, and this is obviously worldwide too, but I was making this Australian centric, but that do have credit cards and are carrying debt on them, and that they are paying interest. So it's not a positive message, but it's to say and to acknowledge that if you're in that situation, that there's nothing you haven't done anything wrong, and I'm going to explain perhaps why you've got into that situation, but there's a lot of people in the same boat as you. I guess that's the key takeaway, is that if you've got credit card debt and you're trying to get your head around it and what to do, there are a lot of people in that same situation. If you haven't got any credit card debt, I'm hoping even tonight's session will encourage you not to get any, and we'll look at some other alternatives, because what we want to do is to retract from that, because it's just an unnecessary stress and cost. But if you're in that situation, you're in the situation, and a lot of other people are, which is, we've got some big numbers here on this slide. We can also see that there's been a rise, and I know the data is not looking that recent either. I've only got it up to 22. I'd like to get some more up-to-date data, but we can at least see a little bit of a trend there. So it's not only that there are a lot of Australians who are holding and carrying credit cards, but it's looking like that they are increasing, and that's just credit cards. So when we talk about personal consumer debt, that covers credit cards, but also all of those buy now, pay later things as well. So be keen to hear from you here tonight if anybody is carrying any of those facilities as well. So it may not be a credit card, but do you have like a buy now, pay now, buy now, pay later facility? That would be interesting as well. Sometimes people feel like they're different. They are, but the financial consequences are very similar, and the stress load associated with them are very similar. So anything where you are not using your own money to buy something is inherently stressful and more costly. So I'm hoping that tonight's session is going to help us to see that. So yes, so that's, I guess that continues that story. So a lot of Australians have credit cards, and they look like that they're on the rise. Interesting to kind of have a look at, well, why are we using credit cards? What is the most common reason that people are using them, or any other sort of consumer debt? The highest percentage here is for emergencies. Does that relate to anyone? So Belinda, you were nodding that was that something kind of how you got yourself into credit card debt? So something comes up, you don't have the funds available, you don't really feel like you have an option, so that feels like it's the only option. And I'll probably reiterate this again at the end, but one of the most helpful strategies for those, and it may sound counterintuitive at first, but it's really helpful for those who are in debt, but also those who aren't yet, is to always have an emergency fund. So even if you've got credit card debt, to ensure that you don't get yourself back into that cycle and get tempted, really important to, whilst you're paying off your debts, so making sure you can make minimum payments on those amounts, is building up an emergency fund of at least $1,000. And I say $1,000, you know, as a rough estimate, but it might be worth personalizing that to kind of looking at what were the costs of those emergencies that you used your credit card for. So was it, you know, for a washing machine, or something happened to your car, or whatever it may have been, just to get an idea of what level of emergency fund would be appropriate for you. But $1,000 is usually a really good starting point. So if you can, even if that's your first mission, if you're finding yourself in debt, is to pay off, and I'm talking about personal consumer debt here. So we need to separate that from any home loan debt, because that, as long as you're making all your minimum payments on that, that's a lower priority. It's your consumer debt that is really costly and stressful. So we want to make sure we can do all we can to get rid of it, or prevent ourselves from getting into it. So number one thing to do first is build up an emergency fund. So if that sort of resonates with any of you, or those listening back, please make that your number one sort of goal for the next, even for the rest of the year. If it takes you that long or longer, that you've set out a plan of how can I build up to that $1,000. And then once you've got that $1,000, we'll talk at the end a little bit about the strategies of then paying down that debt. How can you do it to achieve, you know, reducing it as quickly as possible? But so I guess that emergency fund really speaks to this slide, because we can see that's the number one reason why people are getting into debt. So let's, now knowing that and having that knowledge, let's use that constructively and build ourselves up an emergency fund. So we're not going to fall into that category. So if an emergency comes along, that you will use that money as opposed to getting yourself into debt. And then if you need to use the money, then you would use it, and then you would again reallocate money back to building that fund up again until it's at the level that you want it to be. And then you would carry on with paying off your debts. One of the important questions always is what is an emergency? So really important that you're thinking through, tickets to your favorite artists. If they come to town, you're like, oh, desperate to go and see them live. That's not an emergency. So making sure that, an emergency is really about your four walls. So making sure if there's something to do with it's, impacting your living situation or your manner of transport, that is really about you getting to work or getting to study or, those essential parts. So sometimes we need to reframe emergencies. Adele, sorry, I could just see that you've joined. Welcome to this evening's session. I can see your mic's on. Welcome. We're just going to continue with the session. Thank you. You're happy for you to put it back on whenever you want, if you've got questions, but I'm just going to continue through the session. It is recorded, by the way, so you can listen back. So that's kind of the key takeaway from this slide. Then I think that's enough. So we know that it's really about emergencies. That's why they're being used. Now a question around why are there so many credit card providers? Any thoughts on this? Anyone want to share why they think there are so many credit card providers, or buy now, pay later, or wizard wallet or whatever they're called? Belinda?
Because it's profitable. There wouldn't be so many if it wasn't profitable.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yes. So this is what we should all remember. The only reason why it's not from the goodness of their heart that they want to help you, and you're in that distressing scenario when they want to help you and they want to give you money. It's big profits, massive. And it's those profits that then allow them. So we'll have a look in the next couple of slides that will show that a lot of the credit cards, people will sign up to them to get the points. They justify to themselves, oh, if I pay for it on this, I'll get Qantas points, or I'll get a free this or whatever. But who do you think is paying for those things? Is the people that get caught in credit card debt, paying all the extra fees. So it's those people stuck in that scenario that are actually funding and I think ethically, at some point, we've got to just say that whole cycle's just not right. I don't want to be part of that. If it's getting me a free flight based on the back of somebody else struggling financially, I don't want to be part of it. So that's why it works. They make a lot of money. They know they're going to be preying on people at those stressful emotional points that are desperate. And that's when you need to make sure you sort of give yourself as much buffer and protection from that. And that emergency fund is going to be your number one big one. So we know that big profits, interest rates and fees are massive and they're hidden. So at that point when you're making that purchase, so maybe it's an emotional purchase, they'll be pushing you to buy it. And it won't be at that stage very clear what the true cost of that purchase is, because there's all that interest and fees at the end that you don't actually see. You think, oh, I'm just buying a new laptop for however much, and they bump you up. Oh, you only need a $500 laptop, but they end up convincing you to buy a $2,000 laptop, and you've got to do buy now, pay later. And then the true cost of it comes through. So yes, it's as convincing as they can be. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So we've got to remember that. So yes, massive. So this is just to remind me of the all of the points systems that they have, and all of, it's really, if you think about it, all it's trying to do is make you spend more money. The more money you spend, the more money they make. So whatever they can do to do that, to try and make it look like it's a good deal, make you get all these fancy points. So just you have to be really strong and black it all out and just go, nope, I don't want to be a part of that. So we've got there's just unlimited amounts of them, and even all of our great retailers as well offering it as well. Buy now, pay later, 0%. Is that really the true cost of it? No. The amount of people that then go into financial struggle, it's the fees and the high percentage of interest. It's just Really, yeah, it pushes the ethical boundaries, doesn't it? So really be aware of all of those. Has anybody got into any of the buy now, pay later scenarios? Anybody want to share if that's something that they've been tempted or? So Deborah's had that, yeah, okay. And it's really, and it's again not to say that they're so convincing, aren't they? And at that point when you want something and you need it and it's, you know, oh, did you? And oh my goodness, are you still paying it off? Yeah, yeah. And was that the only, they didn't have a payment plan instead? So a payment plan is better because you don't need to have interest. If you can't pay for something, particularly if it's, you know, they should be able to organize a payment plan where you say instead of paying it up front, they wouldn't have interest. Like, you know, if you've got anything to do with government payments, if there's a tax bill, you can always make arrangements with the organization to maybe pay it in installments rather than having interest incurred on it. So that's something to look at. Okay, if it's a payment plan, that's okay then. Yeah, that's good. Because I was going to say it would be quite, particularly for hearing aids, that wouldn't be appropriate at all. Most medical supplies, if you can't pay for it fully up front, they would be setting you up, yeah. So you wouldn't be incurring any more interest. So Adele, yes, it's the same as Afterpay. So what's really hard in the industry at the moment is that it's got lots of different there's lots of different language and names to make it not sound like credit cards, because everyone thinks, oh my gosh, credit cards, okay. So then they brought in pay now, I keep saying it the wrong way around, buy now, pay later, but it's the same as Afterpay. There's all sorts of different branding. The number one thing to remember is if you don't have the money to buy it now, you shouldn't be buying it, except in your case, Belinda, where it's a medical, you know, you need the hearing aids, and I'm sure that you'd be then looking at, okay, what are my alternatives, where can, and yeah, and then it's reasonable to ask for a payment plan and then factor that into your budget and make sure that you can pay it off. But for other consumer goods, if you don't have the money, you don't buy it. And that's as simple as it is. And it's just getting into that habit and not looking at what other people have. You know, we can all look to other people and say, well, how did they get that new car, that new whatever it is, the latest tool. When you look at your own financial situation, you don't have the money available, you don't buy it. So this whole, I guess, what I'm trying to cater for here is both prevention. So if you're not in this scenario, wonderful, stay in that scenario, don't get yourself caught out. But if you are, there still is a way out of working through the debt as well. Oh, Wallet Whiz is one of my least favorite, and all the ads they do, it just yeah, the amount of money that they spend as well, and it's really just preying on people. So you've got to, as I say, make sure that you're looking after yourself and you're defending yourself against all of these things, which can be really hard. But that emergency fund is the number one thing to do. Because what happens is, as I was talking, you know, just in that example of a laptop, but here we've got, you know, example of a TV, any tech item, but it could be anywhere. It could be, you know, it could be a furniture shop, it could be a sofa. All of the big retailers, as we saw with IKEA, they all offer it. So it will show that you're just paying, oh, I'm just paying, you know, there's this particular item, it's on sale, I've got to buy it, it's a really good deal. So you can take it home, you can use it, enjoy it. You don't have, you know, it's zero interest for 24 months. But then what happens is that they know that you're not in the habit of paying it off. So if you couldn't pay for it now, the likelihood of you being able to pay for it in 2 years' time is even greater. So they know you're not going to be able to pay it. And then the interest is massive. So the true cost of it is never clear. What would be nice is if they had on the label, okay, it's $1,000 if you buy it today, but over the life of the buy now, pay later scenario, it's going to cost you $5,000. You'd be going, oh no, thanks. So you will almost need to do some of those kind of, and it's hard because there's so many different figures and variables and how long you think, oh no, I'll pay it off. But yeah, it would be amazing if they were actually forced to state what the true cost is, because at the moment, we're forced as consumers to make decisions without transparent information. But if you can just really, I guess, as much as possible, have that belief or change mindset that if I don't have the money, I'm not paying for it. So you save up for it, and that is just what it is, and it will get you your momentum moving towards, you know, financial well-being. And it's not just the cost, right? And we know that. And that's why we're probably all wanting to connect into a session like this too, is that we know it's not just the financial cost. It's the psychological stress that comes with it. It's that level of that you carry that the whole time. It's that invisible stress. It may be that, you know, some of it can be shame when people are carrying so much debt. And some want to hide it from the people they love. If they're in relationships, they have that sense that they're sort of out of control, or they're not, you know, managing it very well. It's all of those costs too that get wrapped around in this that, you know, we end up in, which is really challenging. But there is a way forward. So the main thing is to prevent yourself from continuing to get into debt, and then, yeah, working through it. And what I wanted to try and do is bring balanced information to the session tonight too. So at least, you know, giving you that idea of what the landscape looks like. There are lots of credit cards. The main reason why people are using them for emergencies. And it will well be that most people, given that data, are carrying some. So on one hand, we can see that there are some advantages. So some people will still choose. It's not that I would say, in my own philosophy, is to not use them, but it's still up to you. It's still your choice. So it's still a facility, it's still a tool, but it's how you use it. And if you can use it and never have to pay interest, and you don't carry any stress with it, and you feel like, you know, the fraud protection and you know, some of those bonuses are something, you know, that you really value, then that's just know why you're using them. But the disadvantages are just so great, but it depends on your personality and how you use them. So if you can manage it so you don't overspend, because that's also a lot of the research shows that if you actually compare consumer behavior with the two tools, so if you were to have a credit card and a debit card, so knowing all well that with a credit card, you can obviously spend more than you actually have, you're much more likely to spend more than you actually have. But if you have a debit card and you're spending with that, you'll actually find ways you'll spend less, because there's an more of an emotional attachment to that. That's my money, and I'm going to make this budget work, or I'm only going to spend so much because I need to make sure I've got X amount for whatever the other expenses are. But a debit card will change your behavior as opposed to a credit card. It's just the research is there on that. So it's just worth considering. But trying to, just in that spirit of bringing a balanced view, it is important to look at both sides. Really important as well, just to be informed in terms of responsible lending and what are the practices that the institution should be following, is really to be aware of that, and to just, I guess, make sure that sometimes it can feel like if a bank or somebody, particularly banking institutions where you feel that they do have some sort of authority, and you feel like that they wouldn't be lending me money if they didn't think that I could afford it. Well, they actually might. And there is those ethical boundaries. Sometimes we can see with, the wallet wizard, we can see they're a bit dodgy and you kind of think, oh, okay. But you need to actually putting your best foot forward in this scenario and actually taking some responsibility too. They are meant to, and there is a whole, we've got all of the laws behind it. They're essentially there to try and make sure that no one enters into a credit contract if it's not suitable for them, or if they don't have the funds. But there is just multiple, countless scenarios where this is happening. So it is also often up to you to be providing that data. So depending on which arrangement you've gone into, even if you're putting your information together for a mortgage, you're actually going to be providing them with your budget. So it's up to you to be actually creating that budget yourself and being mindful about, you know, what you're including in there. So you're not doing it to try and make it look as good as possible. You want it to be realistic. So you want it to be realistic for you to then be able to make that informed decision about whether the cost of this credit you will be able to manage within your budget. So really important there. So on one side, they are responsible for doing those checks. Some places are doing it, some places aren't. But it still does depend on you providing them with accurate information. So I would always be looking at that myself anyway, because you want to make sure the decision you're making is a responsible one for you and your family. So just, yeah, a little bit more about you can look into. So if you, I guess this is a whole other area too, and happy to talk one-on-one about it as well if there are any scenarios where you feel like you may that the institution hasn't actually done what they were meant to in terms of checking off whether you were being able to manage your credit. There's a whole process through ASIC that can help with that. So your role is really about making sure that you assess your own financial situation before you apply for any credit, to make sure that you feel like not only can you afford it, but even psychologically that you know that you've done that too, and that you've, you know, based on your income and your expenses, that's something you can manage. Make sure that you're budgeting for anything additional, not making the budget too lean that it's too, you know, too stressful, and making sure you build up that emergency fund. So that's, one of the key things to be doing to sort of make sure that you're taking steps to be responsible as well. So I guess based on all of that, before we get into, and I have a look at what the slides are, but I want to have a chat through and share, and for us to share some ideas as well about how we might go about actually reducing our debt. But I think that story so far tonight in terms of talking through, so why would you want to pay it off? And really, if you do have consumer debt, it should be your number one priority. So firstly, building up that emergency fund first and then paying it off. So as we've talked about, so that's really, you know, that true cost of debt is, it's all of the interest rates and late fees that just add up so quickly, and it can really it really encourages overspending, and just the cost of that. And we've got the emotional stress too, the anxiety, the pressure. It just reduces that cognitive load that you have, that you want to have for other things, and can really affect a lot of, you know, really important parts of relationships and sleep. So, and getting into that cycle and dependency just becomes a, you know, an unhealthy habit, and really blocks that ability for you to kind of move into more of a financial well-being space. So financial well-being is defined as being where you feel in control and that you have enough money to pay for your expenses from your own means. So if we're imagining where we're in a state at the moment of managing through credit facilities, that we're not in that financial well-being space. So we want to move by eliminating that to then allow us to move into that. And then it's about, you know, moving towards actually building wealth from there. So not just about being able to meet the day-to-day, but having extra and then moving into a wealth creation space. So it's probably one of the first key steps to financial well-being is getting rid of that consumer debt. So that's why really important. So I'm sure everybody was already convinced that it's an important thing to get rid of. Now let's have a little bit of a chat around some different methods to how we can get rid of it. So, and I guess all of that first part of tonight's session is hopefully also to convince anybody who may not have got into debt yet, please don't do it. You're going to be much easier to sort of move towards those positive steps towards financial well-being without having to go through that first. So I'm really interested, I know a couple of you did share that you have got some debt that you're working through. It'd be nice to hear perhaps some of the strategies or steps that you've been taking, or methods that you have been using, and how I guess, how effective they've been. And then I'll have a little bit of a chat around the snowball method that I've got on the screen here. Okay, cool. Deborah's sharing, so pay off the highest interest rate credit card first. Cool, thank you. That's one of the, so that's the avalanche method, which I've got on the right-hand side of my little diagram here. So that's brilliant. Thank you for bringing that one up. How is that going, Deborah? How are you? Are you halfway through? Are you making good progress? How's your, I guess your like motivation going? How are you feeling about it? Making extra payments when you can. Brilliant. That's great. So you're making decent progress. That's good. Does anybody else have any other strategies to how they're attacking their debt? Anyone else want to share? Lana, making extra payments when you can. And do you make them to which debt would you make, or if you just got the one? Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Belinda. That's another good option. Yep. Is looking at, can I actually get some more income coming in to then get rid of it? And Lana, great. So you're saying you're using the highest interest method first as well. Okay, perfect. Lovely. Okay, cool. So what I wanted to share in this slide is, again, something that maybe something for you both to think about, Deborah and Lana, as you're doing a strategy that's different to what I'm going to share. And so mathematically, what you would have identified, I'd imagine, from choosing that method, the avalanche method, which is what you do is you would list out all of your debts, and you would list them in terms of which is the one that you're paying the highest interest on. So it's essentially the one that is costing you the most. You would list, and then from highest to lowest in that fashion. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you'd be doing is you'd be paying minimum payments on all, so then you're not having any extra interest. And then any extra money that you might have, you'd be putting it all towards the one with the highest interest rate. So that is one of the key methods that is used. Now, the research is showing that the reason why, so what I'd like to ask you both first is, was the reason you got into debt, was it mathematical or was it emotional? Because this is going to link into what the, thanks, Deborah. So it was an emotional. So it was an emotional decision that led you into debt. And what the research is showing is that the snowball method is an emotional method to get you out of debt. Now, it may not be mathematically, but it may be worth a trial to see. But the research is showing that at times both, yeah, okay, is that what the snowball method does is, rather than list your debts from highest to lowest in terms of the interest rate, what it does is it lists your debts from lowest to highest balance. So the amount that you owe. So you may have a debt for $100, you may have one for $2,000, and you may have one for $10,000. So the idea is that you would pay minimum payments on all, and then channel all the extra cash into that smallest debt. And then what happens is you get rid of that one really quick, and you get super motivated, and it's the emotional snowball and momentum that will see your results. Does that make sense? So you get rid of it, and then you're like, that one's done. And then you get fired up. And then you like Linda says, you take on some extra overtime work if you can. Any extra money you put into that second one. And then that $2,000 one's done. And then you've just got the $10,000 one left. So it's that emotional snowballing momentum that they've found is actually much more effective than the avalanche. The avalanche will just take ages because you don't see the results. But where emotional debt done, you'll worth a trial, food for thought. That's what the whole idea of the session tonight was. So give that one a go. It's all about behavioral psychology at the end of the day, and that's why we've got into the debt. So that's the key. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you want me to share? I'm pretty sure it's clear on the slide too. So it's just listing it from smallest to largest. Yeah, cool. And I know we're all not great at making change. So if you've perhaps, particularly Deborah and Lana, if you've been, now in the habit of paying it off, following that avalanche method, it can feel a little bit scary. You'll probably encounter resistance to wanting to change methods, but I would encourage you just to do an experiment. Even just say to yourself, let's try shift it for a month or two, and let's just, give yourself a definite period of time and then just see what happens. You're not going to be anywhere further behind, but I would be really surprised and happy to share the research with you as well offline. So yeah, just to really get that debt done. And that's essentially all that you've got to do, is make sure that firstly, that you've got an emergency fund. So does anyone have an emergency fund at all with is it even a small amount of money in it? Just interested to see. Lana saying yes, Deborah saying no. Okay, cool. So please do that first. So get that $1,000 at least. That's going to prevent that cycle of going back into debt. Get that set up. So before you do this, well, you can do the snowball, but any extra amounts that you have, put that first towards your emergency fund. Once you've got that, then any extra, yeah. I love it, Belinda. Great. So you're halfway there already. Love it. So yeah, call it whatever you like. And giving funds and names is brilliant, because again, you're calling in your emotions. So I think that's brilliant. And even if you want to label your debts different names, give them names too, and then you get rid of them. And so I think that's brilliant as well. So that's great. And this was just a worked example, and sorry, it's a bit of a boring slide, but it was just really just to really demonstrate again, how you would do it. So you do just listing them out. Don't even worry about the interest rates. You're making all the minimum payments on all, and then putting everything towards that small one. Get rid of that small credit card, store credit card, done. Then you're doing the buy now, pay later, done. Get that in personal loan. So then it's just that momentum. And before you know, you'll be celebrating. So yeah, it's as simple as that. The other key tool that I would also suggest, which I haven't got on a slide because it's a whole nother topic, and we do a webinar on budgeting. Does anybody have a budget? Linda's saying no. Anybody else have a budget? No. Lana says I try to. I know it is. Whenever anyone asks, what is your number one money saving tip? It is a budget, and it's easy for me to say because I'm an accountant and I love budgets and I love budgeting, so it's easy, and I love Excel. But whatever you can do, if you like writing things, if you're artistic, whatever it is, get the medium that you like, and it is a budget that will help you, because you must know where your money is going, and you must give every dollar that you earn a job. If it's to pay for food, if it's to pay for the house, electricity, if it's to pay off your credit card, give every dollar a job. So be clear on how much am I earning, and even if it's variable and you need to do it week by week, that's okay. And particularly in this season where you're studying, I know it can be a bit different, but you also know that once you've finished studying, you're hopefully going to get a nice increase in salary and move into a different season, and then you do a different budget. But a budget just needs to be part of, and I think it was in one of my other webinars, it's a hygiene. It's like brushing your teeth. I know we haven't been taught it. It would be great if it was just an easy part of schooling education, because it's really not complicated maths, but it's just a really basic thing that really will set you apart and set you up. Because once you see what you spend your money on, it will give you that rich information to make some really good decisions. You'll start to go, oh my goodness, why am I spending all, I don't need to spend all that on that. Or you can think, I've got this debt to pay off for this period of time, for the next 12 months. I'm not going to spend my money on that. I'm just going to get rid of this debt. So it gets you back in the driver's seat, as opposed to just having money coming in, money going out, and you don't know where it's all going. But I would really, the tool is important because it needs to align with you, and it needs to be something you want to use. So for me, Excel works really well. I'm happy to work with you individually as well to do that. But you can, if you're somebody who's got loves the apps, there's great apps even in your banking. They have a lot of like free functions now. Or you've got that's a very long budget. So that's what you want to avoid. It must be simple. And even if there's parts of your budget that might benefit from, if you have lots of little things that you buy, maybe you want to have money, you want to set aside $100 a week, which is for the coffees and for the little bits and pieces. In your budget, it's $100 or whatever the amount is, and you take it out in cash at the beginning of the week, and you go, right, that's my money for this.
Oh no, that data sheet is my data for my research project. That's not
for your I thought it was your budget.
I've got this massive, long, great big Excel data sheet with all my data for my fractured hip, confused pain relief stuff I'm doing. Yeah. Don't have a budget.
No, okay. Okay, cool. So you like Excel, I'm hoping then, if you've got that, so brilliant. And sometimes it's just getting to that point. And I love that too, because this is actually something I usually say at the beginning of my session, but a really nice thing to kind of round off at the end is it's very likely you're all studying different things, doing different things, using different tools. But what you are doing and what you are becoming experts in, you will be able to use those skills in your financial life somewhere. So sometimes it's breaking down that relationship or construct, mindset, whatever you want to call it, with money. We often have a barrier. We've been brought up not to talk about it. It's the root of it all evil. It's the whatever. We have all these barriers, anything to do with money. It's much more wholesome to be just studying and doing the data analysis and the statistics for this. But it's just as basic as brushing your teeth. We need to brush our teeth. We need to look after our money. It doesn't make you not virtuous. You just need to look after it. And having a budget, just being really practical, pragmatic. What have I got coming in? What have I got going out? Getting it to a point where it's a very easy task. It's not something that's complicated, but that you check in with. As I said, if you're really, on a tight budget scenario, weekly is good, but you'll get to a point where it's monthly. And then once you're back working, you'll probably do it quarterly. You set a budget for yourself. You set up the mechanisms to make it easy to stick to it. And then at the end of the quarter, you sort of check where you're in, and you're like, yep, that was what I was expecting to be. That's where we are. Any extras, so it will become really, so yes, definitely. I'm sure you're all using Excel and have a lot of skills, and just think you can use a very simple component subset of those skills to create a budget and put it together. And I've got, any basic budget worksheet. But I find that when people develop them themselves from scratch and give your each of the components of your budget your own names, is often more helpful, because you know what they are. I think that helps. So definitely have a budget is going to help. I think that's anything. Does anybody want to share any tips that they may have, or anything that you've come across that we've kind of not talked about tonight that you think might be helpful for somebody who's, does have debt and trying to manage it and trying to get out of it? Anything else that they've found, or any experience you want to share that you think might be helpful? Nothing else? And Lana, you said that you've tried to have a budget. Do you have you used a particular app or program that kind of helped you with it, or not helped you because it hasn't really inspired you to keep going? Yes, it's great advice too, Deborah, and a nice message for everyone too, that if you don't have it, don't get into it. It just becomes all consuming. And I think what I'm hearing there too is that there's a cycle, isn't there? It's hard to get out of it, but you can. But that's a nice message for those as well. But I hope, Deborah, from just that difference in the snowball to the avalanche method, that maybe there's something that you can take away from tonight too, that's going to give you something to feel like positive, that you can take a different action. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. That's lovely. Cool, thanks. And Lana, so you're saying that you've used free Vertex budget. I've not heard of that one before. I'm assuming, is it like a web-based, but feel free to check that one out. I might check it down. I often find there's always new things, but and there's lots of different, as I said, lots of different systems, but don't get caught up in them. Finding it, even just doing a paper budget, it can be useful. And if you're somebody who likes colors and pens and make it look nice, make it an enjoyable experience as opposed to just being, really boring. Doing it with somebody can help too. So, okay, cool. So it's web-based and free. You get the bank to reduce the amount so I can't spend it again. Okay, cool. Nice. So yeah, it's about setting limits for yourself too, and looking at what are the strategies for doing that. So yes, Jade, so looking at budgeting apps that connect to your online banking. You often have in your banking, so depending on the bank that you're banking with, often they now have a lot of analytics that can help you as well. So you can actually classify transactions into categories, and that can be really helpful. So you don't even have to have an app that meets or connects with it. I'm a little bit old school and don't want something to engage with my bank. I want them to be separate because I just worry about that. So, and I know there's all sorts of things that protect it these days, but I would rather just do a transaction listing, extract it from my banking and do a sort of a check-in with, approximately how much am I spending in each category. But once you've got a feel for that, and you actually then just say, there's a lot of expenses that are non-negotiable. So once you know what your mortgage is or your rent, they're usually your biggest expense, so you'll know how much they are. Groceries, you need to think about, setting yourself a limit to that too. And if you're somebody who easily overspends in that category, to change your behavior using cash, although I know everyone's resistant on cash and then put you in a line where there's only one checkout or something and they want to use cash, but it really does help change that relationship, because you can see the money, you've only got so much to spend and you can't spend over it. So Lana, I think you're saying that, in your bank, you can also do that, but whatever works for you. So it's kind of thinking, it's firstly coming up with what is my budget, what are my limits for each of these categories, and then how can I support myself to stick to them. So in some of those circumstances, they will just be a direct debit, like your mortgage or rent, but those discretionary things like eating out, groceries. So groceries are usually our second biggest expense, and then it's transport. So it's looking at ways to kind of, your rego and things like that are non-negotiables, because there's nothing to negotiate. But petrol, and maybe it's, giving yourself, looking back and saying, okay, on average, how much do I spend each week? Taking that money out, or looking at options, if it is possible, to try alternative transport for some things, if it's, if you can walk or ride a bike, or to sort of switch it up and sort of think about it. But it's firstly just having that information, which I think is the biggest first step in a budget, is knowing how much am I currently spending. That's probably the most time consuming, and then you can actually then question it and go, well, do I want to keep spending that amount? And I'm not saying forever, but for a particular season. If you're trying to pay off credit card debt, you're going to need to be pretty lean, with groceries and all of those things. You can say, right, if I'm lean for a year and I can pay it all off, that stress is gone, that's worth it. So yes, it's sort of thinking through that. So Jade, I don't have a conclusive answer for you there, sorry. And I'm not really in alliance with any of the budgeting apps, but I would just be looking through your own reviews really to try and find out. There's one that I've heard of called Every Dollar. I think it's an American one, but it doesn't matter. It's not really, but I think it's free. Most of them are free at first, and then if there's extended features or whatever that you want to use, then they start charging you. So watch out for those as well. But I would just bite the bullet and use Excel. That would be my greatest advice, because I think the resistance and the thinking, which is the right app to use, just gets you distracted. And you just got to get down to basics. You just got to know your numbers, and then let those numbers really direct your decisions. So that's the key thing, really. Yeah. So that was, I guess, any other final questions from anyone as we're sort of wrapping up? I hope that's been helpful. Sounds like it has. I do want to just mention that I am engaged with the SCPA to offer free one-on-one coaching. If that's something you're interested in, we can work on a budget. So if you really want to just need somebody to help you, and I can just, even as we're talking through it together, we would have a session through Zoom. I can set up that budget with you. Happy to do that. Or if you're trying to work through your debt, working out an actual plan, how long is it going to take you? So yeah, really happy to sort of be there as a soundboard as well if there's things that you're wanting to work through. So please, feel free to get in touch with the helpline at scpa.net.au. I think it's Craig or Alison who would usually respond. Just let them know that you'd like to organise a time with me. I'm about to go on leave shortly, so just to give you that heads up. So I have availability in probably 3 weeks' time, but really happy to work with anyone. Some of my favourite work that I do. And if you're not already, I would recommend being a member of the SCPA. It's free, so you just sign up through this link as well. And you may already be, but it just gives you early notification to other webinars and resources and workshops. So it's, really helpful to be on that as well. So that's it, I think, for tonight. And it was so nice to have you all along and asking questions, and nice to hear a little bit about what you're all working through as well. But hopefully that's been helpful, and I look forward to catching up with you maybe in a future webinar. We're running them, all sorts of topics. So, keep an eye out, try to cover all sorts of different things. But if you've got any suggestions too, or any topics you would like covered, feel free to email that in as well. And I always take those on board and try to accommodate new topics as we got new students and, different things that you would like sort of, that financial education on. Really happy to put those together. But thank you all for coming, and look forward to catching up with you again. Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Lana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jade. Thanks, Adele. Thanks, Belinda.
Could I have that email address again? Because my